Hey, real estate rock stars. This is Aaron Amuchastegui. I just got to interview Connor Cushman from Cushman Homes. He is the best short-term rental operator in North Georgia, successful real estate agent. Him and I have a really funny story. We met 4 or 5 years ago on Instagram. He replied to one of my stories. We started chatting after that while he was building his real estate business. He even attended our mastermind last year out in Austin. So another one of those people that I met online that have become friends. So proud of this guy and what he's accomplished. Just wait till you hear these tactics of how you can steadily grow a business and how he was able to get 5 deals in his first 3 months when he was doing it like in college, like on the side. I think the methods are great. I think anyone can follow it. And if you're looking to do 5 more deals this year, listen to this podcast and it's going to help. Without further ado, here's my interview with Connor. What's up, man? I'm glad to finally have you on here. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. It's been almost a year since I saw you in person.
Yeah, so we met a year ago, but we've been talking online in one form or another for I feel like a long time, like the least a couple years. Do you remember where that contact first would have started, where you first connected with me?
I should have figured that out before we got on this podcast, but I do think it's been at least 3 years or so since we've been messaging here and there on Instagram. And it's always cool when someone like you who it's easy to put you on a pedestal, someone like you is accessible through the DMs on Instagram. And I'm always pleasantly surprised by the way you interact and show up on Instagram for us average Joes like me.
Yeah, we've had some fun conversations on there. Well, you're not average anymore, or you weren't average then, but I love getting to meet people on there. So I don't know if you first saw me or connected with me through just purely Instagram or through an old Bigger Pockets thing, or even the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. But I know it was all stuff that we had chatted about. As we're talking, I'm going to pull up when we had our first DM. I'll see how long it took. But the
It was
cool
probably a Bigger Pockets podcast or the Real Estate Rockstars podcast. Yeah, it had to have been one of those two.
Yeah. But it's a really fun example because I've talked about it a bunch on here. There's been guys that I interviewed on the podcast that became friends. Oh, dude, you have two Connor Cushmans though. Like the what is which?
Is that like a copycat? It's Cushman Holmes on
Yeah.
Instagram. I'm
Okay.
going to our DMs right now to I'm seeing at least 2021, April 2021, almost 4 years ago.
April 2021. The first question and outreach. So yeah, you said what is the tool I was comparing offers on? So I'd made a post of from that was like when I was using Listing Spark, and it was like here's like 4 different offers we got for a property. And then we started chatting about a whole bunch of stuff. And anyway, we've got messages back and forth, talking kind of about real estate, kind of about goals. And here we are. And last year I talked to you. And so we've been connected online for a long time. And you've been sharing content and I've been sharing content. And then last year I talked you into coming and joining us at the Real Estate Rockstars conference for the first time. And it was pretty fun and surreal to meet somebody for the first time in person that you've actually been talking to for a few years. And but let's talk real estate. Let's see how we got here before that. How long have you been involved in real estate as a profession?
Yeah, yeah. Well, real quick, like your the experiences I've had that start digital and then become real. That's a big theme through my whole real estate like sales career too. Even like I'm looking forward to the conference this week. I think or this month. David Green's going to be speaking there.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience where I got to meet David Green and work with him on a Blue Ridge, Georgia cabin because of a similar sort of story, right? Like messaging him and not necessarily seeking to get anything, but just build relationships with people that I look up to and admire and respect. So that's been a common theme for me in my real estate journey. Um, I got licensed in 2018, and I am now so 6 years into the business. I live in the North Metro Atlanta area, and I sell, invest in, and manage a bunch of real estate, most of which is short-term vacation rentals in the North Georgia mountains. But I got my start in residential homes, and still the percentage breakdown of short term rental investors to traditional home buyers and sellers kind of ebbs and flows. Right now, it's probably 60-40 short term rental investors, but have a nice kind of mix of traditional home sales and short term rental investors.
Yeah. So you got licensed in 2018. Were you doing some investing before that, or did you like look at doing Airbnbs before you got licensed, or was getting licensed your first step?
Getting licensed was my first step. I was still in college, so I was a little older being in college, but so that I would have been 20, 23, 24, finishing my last year of university out in Utah. So I actually got licensed in real estate in Utah, and I had a little tech career stint. So I had a couple years of overlap with a full-time W-2 job in tech. So I worked at LinkedIn. So my junior year summer of college, I interned with LinkedIn in their New York City office across in the Empire State Building. Lived across the street. Um, Go back to my senior year of school, and I already have the full-time job lined up. Right,
Mhm.
coming out of school. So for my last year of school, I said, "Hey, I'm not going to get some lame part-time job again. I'm going to try some things." So I started like touring our car and doing some weird side hustles, driving DoorDash. And I was like, I got to get my real estate license, got my real estate license. And then that summer before starting my tech career, I sold 5 homes in Utah. So it was probably 3 million ish. And
That's
I was
in
on a,
2018.
this is 2019, got
Okay.
licensed in 2018. It was the summer of 2019. Sold 5 homes, loved it. I was like, this is what I want to do. But I already was kind of on this path towards tech sales, basically. So put that on hold, moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, started my corporate career. 2020 hits, COVID hits, we go remote, and I moved back to where I grew up, North Metro Atlanta suburbs. So that's where I am now. That's where I'll be for forever, I think. Picked things back up with a mentor here locally in Georgia, got licensed in Georgia, kept the W-2. I ended up keeping the W-2 until late 2022. So I'm only 2-ish years removed from that and 2 years into like full-time real estate sales. But in 2020, that's where things really started to kind of take off. So I sold a couple homes at the end of 2020 here in Georgia, bought my first long-term rental, and then 2021 bought a couple more long-term, short-term rentals, and started posting about short-term rentals on Instagram. I hate being on video, or I did at the time. Never thought I'd be like a video guy. And started sharing my story about short-term rentals, and that's when it just blew up in the short-term rental direction, and then it's been kind of a steady climb since then.
Yeah. So 2019, you're like back at school for the summer, knowing you're about to move to the Bay Area. So you're like, hey, I got a few months to try to make some money doing something. It blows my mind that you did 5 deals with that mindset. 2019 wasn't an abnormal, crazy market. You're in Utah. 2019, you're like, hey, I'm going to try this for a few months. How did you do 5 deals? How did you get your first deal? Where did you get your first deal when you're like, hey, I'm a college student. I'm just going to do this for the next few months, but like, let me be your agent?
Great question. So I was on a team. I had a great team leader who taught me the power of open houses. I have not leveraged that knowledge very much in the last couple of years, to be frank.
Yeah.
But one of my closings was from running an open house on one of my team's listing, and I do fundamentally believe that that's a great strategy to close at least a few deals every year if you do it. And he had a good open house playbook where you get the balloons, you set up the signs at the right street corners, you really know your stuff on the house. You've got a sign-in sheet. You know a couple houses nearby that you could take that buyer to. So you have a playbook. So you approach the open house with a real playbook. So I had a good team leader. I had a couple of family or friend referrals. So sphere of influence, because I was posting a little bit on Facebook and on Instagram at the time. I think just about what I was up to, and I had a relatively strong network. Not because of anything I did intentionally, but I think I just always did a good job of staying in touch with friends and shared kind of ideas about business and things. So I had a lot of business oriented, real estate oriented friends in my network. So I think 3 or 4 transactions were family or friend referrals, and then the one open house lead. And it was like I do think it shined through to people that this was something I was like in and passionate about and something I love. And that's totally the case. It was right and meant to be for me.
So so that playbook's pretty awesome. For anybody out there, and whether someone has been an agent for, 10 years and they're wanting to bring in some new revenue and they're forgetting how simple that part might be, or whether it's a new agent just getting going, or somebody trying to make a pivot because they've been doing something different. I mean, we talk about open house leads a lot, but a good open house is much different than a bad open house. And then leveraging that open house into something else is even bigger, right? So for anybody that maybe is listening to the podcast for the very first time, you went and did an open house for somebody else. It wasn't your listing. It was either for your team lead or someone else. You said, "Hey, can I host an open house, for your event, right? Or for your listing, for your house." You're getting the leads. And I'm assuming while you're hosting those open houses, you're posting videos, you're talking about it, like you're showing people the house. And so now the people that you've been kind to the past few years that just know you as Connor Cushman, our friend I went to high school with, or somebody that I met at college, or somebody I know on Instagram. Now they're like, "Oh, Connor Cushman is also a real estate guy and he likes it. I can see him out there working." So then as a question came up, it turned into something. Do I have that kind of equation kind of right as I'm re-summarizing? Does that sound about right?
That's right. And by the way, like I got into the real estate business with the explicit plan not to spam my network and do the, no offense to Keller Williams, but the Keller Williams SOI thing. I
Yeah.
thought I want to build this business on my own merit and knowledge and like passion. And and then only about 4 years into the business did I start saying to my network, like, "Hey, I'm ready. I'm your guy. I believe I'm better than any other option you have. So you might as well work with me because you know me and I'm the best," type of thing. But for the first 4 years, I explicitly tried to protect my personal sphere of influence from feeling like I was anything, like I was trying to get, like I needed their business, right? So the SOI stuff that came through was very organic and not forced, and that's kind of continued on, and throughout my journey is it's always been kind of this organic inbound type flow, as opposed to pulling and scraping and spamming people and feeling this like tension that I didn't personally want to feel, like I was running an MLM or something like that. Um, and so lots of respect for the people who are more aggressive that way with their sphere. And I think I could probably sell a lot more real estate if I was more aggressive that way, but that was the way I wanted to kind of set up my business.
I think that's a super common thing. Like there's lots of people that become agents that are like, "Hey, I want to become an agent, but I don't want to appear salesy. I don't want my friends to start thinking that's all that I talk about." Something that you said early on though is you said when you were doing those posts, people could probably just sense how passionate you were and how serious you were about it. So there's like a play, or there's a spin, or just this other version. And so part of that other version is like, "Hey, you're out doing an open house for someone else, but if you're sharing videos and you're posting about it and you're talking about it, and they see that it's sincere." Some people say, yes, you have to do the ask. At the end of it, you have to say, "Now, if you're looking to buy or sell a house, reach out to me." But in your case, it's like, not really. They had to see that, like, "Hey, Connor is doing real estate and he's passionate about it, and he sounds pretty knowledgeable. So if I have a question, I'm going to ask about it." I get a message on Instagram every week from somebody that says, "Hey, I have a real estate question. Can I pick your brain, Aaron? I have a real estate question." And I've never once said, "Hire me for something." The only thing I ever sell is like, "Hey, sign up to come to our mastermind." And I'd spend like 2 weeks out of the year doing that. And the rest of the time, I don't sell anything online. But like once a week, someone will say, "Hey, Aaron, can I pick your brain about real estate?" And so someone's going to call me tomorrow that earlier in the week, I said, "Yeah, give me a call on Thursday afternoon." And they're going to probably say, like, "Is it a good time to buy or not? Are interest rates going to go up, or are they going to go down? All right, now I want to buy a house. What should I do?" Right. And then I'll have to find an agent to work with them because I'm not actively licensed, right? So that'll be like a lead that comes in that's just from like natural talking. So let's talk about your open house equation for just a second, right? Because you said you were doing open houses and you were doing them in a special way. And I went to some open houses this weekend that were like listed on the MLS, and there was a sign out front that said open house, and that was it. And I've seen some where people are posting social media and doing other things. What did you do though? You mentioned balloons, you mentioned signs. So if someone's never been successful on open houses, like what would be your playbook for that you would recommend?
Yeah, here's a quick rundown of the playbook. So there was a big, probably 8-10 foot kind of PVC sign banner thing in the front yard. So that was cool. And then
An 8 to 10 foot banner that said like open house?
something like that. Yeah. Yeah, it was legit. And then 4 to 6 directional signs within a quarter mile radius, pointing people the right way with a red balloon. It was specifically red balloons. We were a Keller Williams team, so that might have been why.
Yeah.
The directional signs with the balloons. There was a sign on the door that said like, "Hey, we're doing an Amazon gift card giveaway if you submit feedback, because we want feedback for the sellers." The feedback form is kind of your typical feedback form, collecting information, also asking if they have an agent, if they're pre-approved. So a couple of qualifying questions. And then there was a legitimate Amazon gift card giveaway amongst that pool of people, maybe for the week or from the team, that the people that showed up to the team's open houses that week. And then those folks were put on a drip campaign from our CRM, and the winner was contacted for the gift card giveaway. And then there was also the idea that you knew one or two houses in the area that were of a similar price point that you could potentially put a sign on the door that said, "Hey, I'm away for a few minutes," and then you're taking that buyer off to show house. And I do believe that was how it transpired with the client that I picked up at the open house and then sold them a different house.
So that's pretty interesting. So you make sure there's some other houses that are like similar, or you figure out whatever's similar nearby. So that is actively on the market, like vacant with lockbox. And so you have that ready. So somebody says, "Oh, I like the house, but I don't like that the master bedroom is on the second floor. I'm really looking for one on the first floor." You would literally say at that point, like, "Hey, there's another listing around the corner that's vacant right now that I think the master's on the first floor. Do you want to go check it out?"
That's right. And I think the closing that I had in Utah was, maybe we didn't leave that day, but we did in fact go see one of the houses that I pitched to them, like I had ready there. Because the reality is like most of these people that are coming through are not going to actually buy that open house, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the open house strategy, I think for good reason, kind of got abandoned from 21 and 20 to 22, because there just wasn't even time to get an open house done. We're now back in open house season, and I've started to pick it up a little bit. Interestingly, I've probably only done a handful of open houses in my career, and each one of them has led to a buyer closing, but not of the property that they came and saw. So I do believe that they're fruitful.
Yeah. So again, I like the idea of if you somehow talk them into like, "Let me go show you this other one really quick," and you're prepared. Now you're like pseudo representing them, right? Now you've actually started that process. And even if they don't even like that first one, then they see that's the process, right? The process is if they want to see a house that's on the market, you can go get them in at any time, using your realtor keys. And so now they understand a little bit what that's going to be like. And then so somebody goes and does an open house for the first time, they get a couple leads. What is your follow-up sequence like?
The I would I think this is actually a good question to highlight, like a weakness that I've
Yeah.
had in my journey. So just to kind of like walk you through some numbers. So it was like 3 million in 2019, then it was like 1 to 2 million in 2020, because I only sold maybe the last couple months of that year when I moved back to Georgia. But then it was like 10 million, 10 to 12 million for the next 3 years. So a big jump in 21, 22. I'm mixing up the years.
Okay.
2019 was 2 to 3 million. 2020 was 2 to 3 million. 21, 22, 23, and 24. So 21 was probably like 5 to 7 million. And then 22, 23, and 24 were like 10 to 12 million. And now this year I'm pacing, so far we're early in the year, but I'm targeting 20 million, and I'm pacing really well for that. And a mistake that I've made throughout the process is just not, I think what held me back for so long was a lack of systems and a good CRM. And so I'm at the conference last year with you guys, and where everyone's talking about CRMs, and I
Yeah.
didn't really have one. I had a very, very sorry excuse for a CRM. And so those follow up sequences have mostly been manual. It's mostly been spreadsheets. And now over the last year, I've really focused in on systems and processes and follow up sequences. And it's interesting to see how that's transformed my business. and it's converting. It's taking a $10 million a year business to 20, and I see the path to more growth just because you have that foundation in place.
Yeah.
So I kind of just dodged your question, but I think it's an important thing to highlight.
Yeah. I said, "What's your follow-up?" And you're like, "You should do some follow-up."
I
But
should do
that's,
some. Yeah.
that's fine. If you can be successful without, then just imagine how successful you can be with, and maybe that's what you're talking about is happening this year. Let's talk about the conference really quick. So last year you come and we have so much fun because it's like we tell people you're going to learn some real estate tactics, but we kind of trick them to get them there thinking it's just real estate tactics, because we do a lot of real estate tactics, a lot of how to's. Somebody's teaching about how to set up a CRM. Somebody's talking about how to do buyer gifts really easy for $100 a month. Like, people have these different like easy tricks. There's a bunch of easy button tricks people learn. Then we also do some inspirational, change your life, set your goals, like really become decide to, become a superhuman. What was your biggest, maybe one or two takeaways when you left? Like, so when you left, you got to meet everybody. What were one or two things that you said, "Hey, I'm going to change this right away," and then you saw the change? And is the CRM is the CRM one of them, or is there something else on top of that?
Definitely that. It was very clear to me, and it's interesting because you could walk away with like specific tactics to implement, and I certainly had a list of those. But it's kind of this reflective experience because you're listening to all these different people and you're seeing your parts of the story that you connect with. And the thing that was just right in my face was I'm doing so many things right, but I'm just like bleeding out in my funnel because I don't have systems and processes pulling people through the funnel. So I have a pretty good top of funnel sort of business where I have lots of connections, lots of stuff happening on social media channels, lots of people that know, like, and trust me. But then I have just tons of leakage. I barely have a funnel because the walls aren't there and stuff's just falling out and going all over the place. So that was the clear takeaway for me, is that I needed to build CRM systems and follow-up systems and templates and processes to keep people through the process and also make it clear to my clients that there was a process from the start and this is how they're going to go through. And as I've kind of like chipped away at pieces of that, because that's an ongoing journey, I've seen the conversion rates increase, and I've just seen the experience from a client's perspective feel more clear to them and more clear to me, and it's growing and headed in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that was probably takeaway number one. The other is I went into the conference feeling um, a part of my journey that I think has been interesting is just like how much because I'm now at roughly 12 properties that I either own or manage, short-term rentals mostly. And I have the property management company and I manage all of them. And at times I felt like I've been too distracted and pulled away from my core business of the agent business. And I went into the conference feeling really kind of guilty and like I was doing that wrong. And I think what clicked for me is that actually I'm a business owner and operator and entrepreneur that got my start in real estate. And I don't need to like stop doing all these other things. I just need to focus on what matters most and get systems in place so that I can do other things well as well. So it kind of elevated my vision of not feeling bad or guilty about kind of having this personality that wants to take on multiple projects at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, becoming a better Airbnb investor could help you become a better, Airbnb real estate agent to help your people buy them. There's lots of overlap. Conference environments are also really interesting too, because like you're going to hear something get repeated a bunch of times. And so maybe the first time you heard about a CRM at the conference, it was like no big deal. But then when maybe the 15th person talked about their different and this happens as people are just telling stories, maybe this other person's story about something that happened in their CRM and somebody else, and you start to hear like it almost hits you like a ton of bricks. Like, oh, every successful person, like this is one of their tools that they're using. And it's not a tool that takes, 2 hours of their day, even. It's just like one of their tools. It's like one of their client gift things that they do, or one of their tactics. And you start to go like, oh, if everybody's doing this, I need to be able to implement this. To maybe get vulnerable for a second. So we're going to see you out here in a month. It's like a month from today, maybe a couple weeks after this thing airs. And so for everybody, it's our Real Estate Rockstars conference in Austin. We're taking over the South Congress Hotel for a week. It's going to be so much fun. Hundreds of people, like maybe 120 people coming in from all over the U.S. But the first day I ask everybody, like, what are you hoping to learn or take away over those few days that you're there? Like, is there a sticking point in your business right now or something you're like, man, I really hope I get a handle on this thing this year?
Real Estate rock stars. It's Sarah Denig. And today I'm telling you, the holidays are over. If you are still nursing that holiday hangover and your whole goal for the year was just survive this season, it's time to level up. Come join us March 4th through 6th in Austin, Texas. This is a life-changing experience where people are so open. They will share. You will increase your business. If you have goals and you want to execute, come join us. We are better together, and I cannot wait to see you guys. Take this chance on yourself. Trust me.
It was a theme for me at the time last year, this idea of like hiring and delegating. I waited way too long to delegate, and that's another thing that stunted my growth, and that I'm now seeing the unlock of getting the right people on your team. So the hiring and delegation and just hiring and retaining good people, um, the importance of that and the magnitude of that for any successful business, and especially real estate, um, is just as top of mind for me. So that was already something I was thinking about last year. The problem last year is that I didn't even have the systems and processes to be able to like properly delegate. So I feel like I'm in a much better position now, a year later, to actually bring someone in, and I've started to have some success there as far as delegation goes. So I think picking up more tips and best practices there this year will be
Yeah.
valuable. Yeah.
Cool. We got a couple of people that will probably be great for that. Yeah, it's a good point. Like, you can't hire somebody to take over your CRM if you don't have a CRM, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
once you get the thing that they can do, then at first you're like, I need an assistant because I don't have enough time in the day. And you're like, okay, do this. You're like, well, I need to come up with a system to show them who to make the phone call to, right?
Yeah.
Like the all those different things. So
I've had a couple of failed attempts at like VA hires, and they were mostly my fault because I brought them into just like a total disaster of an organization where it was so hard for us to get on the same page about what they needed to do, how they needed to do it, and I made it so hard for them to be successful. So that's on me, and that's part of just becoming like a better business operator.
yeah, I agree. So what's your year like right now? So the beginning you started with open house leads and then sphere of influence from getting online. You're going to do 20 million in revenue this year, or in sales. What is how are you going to get those leads? Where are they going to come from?
Yeah, my core lead generation channel has been Instagram, and mostly building trust through, I would say, Instagram stories specifically. So sharing about my my own investing, or my clients' investing successes and challenges, talking about how short-term rentals work, and so that's still going to be a core part of my lead generation. The other, I'm seeing more and more past clients turn into referrals. So past client referrals, past clients selling or buying more. That's the beauty of working with short-term rental investors, is they tend to have lots of other friends that invest, and they also tend to buy and transact more frequently than your typical home buyer. So lots of my clients are buying their second or third short-term rental with me, or asking me to refer them to a trusted referral partner, short-term rental expert in another market, or they're wanting to offload a property and reposition. So I'm now, you get a few years into this business, and if you do it right and do it well consistently, it just starts to feel like this snowball. And I feel like I've got that momentum of just past client referrals. And I am trying to build better partnerships, strategic partnerships with agents in other markets, target kind of short-term vacation rental markets where I'm getting referrals from folks in the Smoky Mountains or in the Florida Panhandle or other vacation markets around the country. So those would probably be the three core sources of leads.
Yeah. You said a few things there that I think are worth repeating. I think that's really smart. So like if most of your clients are short-term rental clients, right, then it makes a lot of sense to talk to agents in other areas, because a lot of investors, one, the best part about investors is like if you help somebody buy or sell their forever home, you're probably going to do a deal with them like every 3 to 5 years, because the forever home never really happens. But like every 3 to 5 years, you're going to help them sell that, help them buy another one. But if you help an investor, you could be helping them once a year, a few times a year, because there's no limit. But then I could also see them saying like, hey Connor, this North Georgia Airbnb is going really, really good, but I'm a little nervous about the market up there. Seems like maybe it's getting saturated. Like, where else could I go? And so if you're talking to a bunch of other agents online that are also short-term rental agents, then you can reach out to them and go, hey, I've got somebody that's looking to go into the Smokies. I think that is a really, really brilliant way to be able to hand off, referrals to somebody else to be able to take that, existing client base and grow it. And there's probably a way to make sure that you really grow that network. And I guess, and make sure those agents know to send people to you too. Cause I can
That's
see
right.
like people that are really good at representing, investors. There's a lot of trade-off with that. I don't think we've heard that talked about enough of how people can, we talk a lot about referrals on our Facebook group and things like that, but creating a referral generation machine by focusing on one thing and then connecting with agents in that specialty, I think is pretty great. So what's your percentage of like listings versus representing buyers?
It's shifted to probably 60% listings, 40% buyers right now. Historically, it's been 90-10 buyers. And I'm seeing that shift happen as more of my, my short-term rental buyers are now looking to reposition.
Cool. So that makes sense. So most of the listings you're getting, and that's kind of like the typical real estate journey that people talk about. It's so funny because real estate is not easy, but it's simple, right? If you follow the equation, so you're like, hey, I started by doing open houses and telling people about it, and I got some leads from open houses, and then some of my friends saw I was doing it and they hired me. Cool. And then that starts to grow. And then along the way, you're like, I kind of became a specialty. And then, so I started helping people buy Airbnb stuff. And so people usually start as buyer's agents, and there usually is a trend or a transition to becoming listing agents when your first clients start selling. And then if done absolutely perfect, you're like 50-50 because you're like, hey, I'm selling 10 houses for people that I helped them buy 2 years ago, and I'm buying 10 houses for them as they're buying their second one or whatever. And so even though the last year in most places, what do you think the market's been like in general in North Georgia where you are? So like in Austin, it has been brutal, volume year over year, prices down year over year. Stuff is transacting and selling every day, right? So when I say brutal, it's not like people aren't buying houses at all, but it is, but you have to work 3 times as hard to do, half as much volume here for a lot of different conditions. But you've been growing your business out in North Georgia. So you've been doing great. Are you doing average for there, or do you think you're doing like increased market share? Do you think it's tough for most people, but you figured out a secret way?
Yeah, I've definitely taken market share if I just look at total number of transactions and my growing volume. So I'm definitely growing and taking market share. The North Georgia mountains, we have, I believe, like strong fundamentals across the North Metro Atlanta area that support the growth, like long-term growth of North Georgia. But like specifically in the short-term rental space, it's been pretty flat as far as property values for the last 2 to 3 years. So my buyers will come back to me from 2 years ago, and I'm like, your value is basically flat in most cases on the short-term rentals. Um, the the competitiveness amongst short-term rental operators has grown, and so it's much more of a, if you're going to come do this now in North Georgia, you have to make sure that you're operating at a high level. So that's a focus of mine for my buyer clients. And then on the sell side, it's just, hey, we have to price smarter. You'll sit for 6 to 9 months if you're not careful, right?
Yeah.
But I believe I'm bullish, and I have to be right because I sell North Georgia real estate. But I am a believer in the fundamentals of like the North Metro Atlanta, North Georgia area. There's still lots of development happening, and you just have good population growth fundamentals in the suburbs that support the vacation markets. People moving from the Northeast and moving up from Florida, and I've kind of keep a close eye on Florida too, and I see kind of the trends of anecdotally people saying, yeah, we moved from the Northeast down to Florida. They call it halfbackers, I think. They move from the Northeast down to Florida, and then they decide Florida's not quite for me, and they move halfway back up to the North Georgia mountains.
I've never heard of that. That's funny.
Yeah.
They're getting a little bit closer to home, but not being all the way.
Yeah.
That's a funny balance. And I guess the same thing with Airbnb, like you said, when competitive, I say Airbnb for short-term rentals, but it comes to short-term rentals, competition has gone way up. And just like there's a big difference between a good open house and a bad one, or one that was done in a big way or a small one, There's a big difference between a good Airbnb or a bad one. There's what we see in Austin, we see a lot of like themed ones that are like decorated wholly for bachelorette parties or wholly for bachelor parties or wholly for family stays. Like they've got a theme that they follow, or there's like there's a pickleball one that's like kind of crappy neighborhood, crappy house, but it has a pickleball court. So the whole theme is pickleball. And so it's definitely not, when Airbnbs first came out, short-term rentals first came out, it was kind of like people would go there instead of a hotel, right? So they're like, hey, it's actually less expensive than a hotel, especially if you got a family or multiple people coming together. So it was like easy. But now as competition goes up, people want to do it, want to stay there, not just because it's cheaper. They want to have more fun. They want it to be like, oh, this place looks like it'll be so fun, is what I hear when people are looking at like booking. And so, yeah, stepping your game up on that for people. So what do you like? So now you've been an agent for 7 years. You've been licensed for 7 years, 6, 7 years. You are really getting your momentum. You did tech for a while. What's something that you wish you would have known about real estate when you first got started?
I wish I would have. This may be an interesting take. I wish I would have considered that I was building a business that you can't really sell.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in fact building a business, and so I think that that's kind of a two-part thought. Number one, I was building a business, and I should have thought about um, building a business from the start, as opposed to building a demanding job. So I'm kind of unraveling myself out of building a really demanding job and now building a business. But I think I wish I would have also considered that I was building a business that's not really sellable. It's more or less a high paying job. Fortunately, I kind of unintentionally built equity and value in other things, other businesses, and my portfolio of rental properties. But I think I would have paused at the beginning and considered that path a little more. Ultimately, I'm super glad I'm in the real estate sales business. But for someone that's like at the beginning of the journey and thinking like I'm gonna dedicate my time, my next 5 to 10 years to real estate, I think that's a good question to ask for the people that are kind of half into it. Of, if I'm going to build a business, should I maybe consider something that's a sellable business, or yeah, like maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a different thought than most people have when they come on this podcast.
It's a great point. It is a different thought, right? Like, because the people have sold their book, and I've interviewed some people that kind of like sold their book of business, and there's a lot of challenges with it. And there's probably a formula to be able to do that. But the happiest people that I've seen, like in business, where they get to own it and it doesn't. So, what's the downside of having a high paying job, right? It's the same as like golden handcuffs at any corporate thing. You're going to work 60 or 70 hours a week. The money's going to be so good, you're not going to want to go on vacation because every time you do, you're going to make less money. Or like that's the fear. And there's a lot of people that like quit their job to become an agent because they want more freedom. Then they realize it's a business that takes a lot of time. But some of the best setups I've seen is people that become like the CEO of their business, right? And maybe next year, Connor, like if this is the year where you do the hiring, the delegations, and the systems, maybe next year at this time, you're going to be like, I'm the CEO of my business. And right now, I'm only doing the stuff I really like doing. I'm only doing the negotiations, or I'm only doing the showings, or I'm only whatever it is, right? Because there's something in there, or I'm only doing the Instagram stuff because my team is doing it. I remember one of our best like brokerages that we had set up when we were doing tons and tons of flip volume was we had like our broker of record, and then we hired 2 early agents that were like early in their career, and we just paid them salaries. We paid them salaries to like essentially we had so many listings, and they just fielded the sign calls and they closed the transactions, and my lead agent, the only thing she would do is like negotiate the deal. She would call them when it was like, no, I need 5 grand more, 10 grand more. She would negotiate the deal, and that was it. And if somebody emailed her, they were replying back as if they were her. It was brilliant, right? And so I've seen the setup where you can like own it instead. But I'm really curious to see next year how you feel about your real estate business. Because yes, no matter what, it is very difficult to sell and not have the face of someone thinking they're working with Connor.
Have
Right?
you, what are the like multiples or structures of selling your book? I think listeners would be curious about that. I
Yeah.
am.
So what I've heard a lot about is like, that unfortunately it's like one times revenue, right? So
Hmm.
whatever your annual revenue was, the year before. Like if your net commission was 500 grand last year, right? You're going to be able to sell your book for 500 grand because it's really, really difficult to keep that going. What I've seen people be a little bit more successful on is like, they get the incoming call and they go, "Hey, I actually can't do that one for you right now, but a really good friend of mine." Essentially, there's also a way that you could sell your book through referrals without actually saying you're doing it. Where I've seen people say like, "Oh, I'm actually I can't do that right now because I'm really really booked." But I have a great friend who's also an agent. Like I've had a few people go to him lately, and he's been really really happy. Like, let me introduce you to him, and he'll be able to help you. He's a rock star, and so then people at least believe that they're dealing with Connor's friend. I've seen that be more successful because if somebody calls and says, "Hey, um, Connor's no longer an agent. I saw that he sold you a house before. I want to introduce you. I want to introduce myself. Like he sold me his business, right?" And I don't even know what the right pitch is to do that. But if they're like, "Hey, Connor's not an agent anymore, but I just wanted to follow up with you, like taking over the CRM or something," very difficult because at that point they're like, "Well, I was, I liked Connor. I was, loyal to him, but if he's not doing it anymore, I don't have to be loyal to him anymore." Right. But I think the way to sell is actually you quietly sell. You don't actually tell anyone. You still keep doing all the different things. Like let's say you just ran your Airbnb company and you were an agent. Then when people call and reach out to you, you're like, "Cool, I've got the best person that can help you with that right now. Like I'm actually too swamped working on my other thing, but I'll make sure they take care of you. And if at any time if he doesn't answer the call or he doesn't do it, like call me back and I'll make sure he goes and does his job." Right. So then they feel like you're the manager instead. But yeah, it's really difficult to go hands up. It's more like I've got a couple companies that are like lifestyle companies at this point. Like some of our software ones are like real estate lead software companies. We thought someday we were going to sell those for like a 9-figure thing. And when COVID hit, we're growing, growing, growing. When COVID hit, we like stopped growing. And it's like, but it makes profit every month and it has revenue. Right. So I'll probably never sell that business, but we've set it up in a way that I spend about 2 hours a week on it and I get a pretty good, salary or profit share. So I think I think real estate can become a lifestyle business like that, where you could still make a certain amount every month. You can't walk away completely, but you can make a certain amount a month by working less. But it's a really interesting perspective. It is a business. And so thinking back to that, so you may have not even done the business. You may have said, "Hey, if I'm going to spend 5 years building a business, I'm going to build a different one. I'm going to go do tech." Right. Or is there something specifically when it comes to running the business, you're like, I would have still been a real estate agent, but my first couple of years I'd have done this different.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be clear, like I love real estate sales, so I would have done it regardless. But I talk to like new agents who are like, it seems like the one door they think they can enter is real estate sales.
Yeah.
And I'll just kind of encourage them like, "Hey, you're building a business that's not really a sellable business. So if you want entrepreneurship and business building, just consider that as your path." So I think I'm super happy with the lifestyle business kind of aspect of real estate. And I think I'll do this for like 50 years. I
Yeah.
really do. And I'll just build other businesses that are sellable. But going back to the beginning, a simple thing that I should have and would do if I could go back is just make sure that I'm super disciplined about keeping a good log, even if I didn't have a CRM. So you're selling like 1 or 3 transactions a year for your first couple of years because you're just trying to figure it out. It's not hard to have a spreadsheet with buyer's name, like sales price, close date, contact info, birthday, interests, like notes, and just have a spreadsheet with every client. And even better, a separate page on your Google sheet that is like every lead you've talked to. And if you're new to the business, that might only be 10 people in a year. And as it grows, you need better systems like a CRM to manage that and make that feasible. But I wish I would have been more disciplined about keeping a log and a database of contact information. And then layer on top of that just a little more intention and routine around following up, saying happy birthday, taking care of those people in a genuine way. I suspect that my business probably would have doubled each year from the start had I just done that a little better. And I think that's a really easy thing to do from the start.
Yeah. I think that was probably our biggest regret our first few years of a real estate company too, is we were so busy on our listings that we let a lot of the people that were like, "Hey, they weren't qualified to buy a house yet." Right. Like they would call, they want to buy a house. We'd say, "Hey, do you have a lender?" They're like, "No, what do I do?" And we're like, "Oh, well, go find a lender and then find an agent, right? When it was like they could have easily been written down somewhere, because then there were times a couple years later where all of a sudden we were hungry for deals, and we took like leads for granted early on, or you forget about it. The conversation is so little, but essentially if someone has called you on one of your signs or emails or talked to you ever, or like just mentioned it, like, yeah, getting that thing into a sheet to where even if nothing else, every few months it's shooting everybody a text message, a call. It's you don't have to have a great system, but no system is the worst with doing that. So Connor, this has been fun catching up. It's been again, it's been years and years in the making, since 2021 to get to have you on here. I'm excited to see you next month in Austin. Any final thoughts, last stuff that you want to make sure all the listeners know or think about before we say goodbye?
Yeah, the final thought I have is like, I think a core part of my boring, slow, steady progression through this business is just the ability to operate with integrity at like every step of the way, and a way to kind of create structure so that the choice to kind of protect your fiduciary obligation to all of your clients is uh, to have your personal finances like in place. So I started in this business with a W-2 salary, so I didn't need any commission. And then by the time I left my W-2, I had a rental portfolio that supported my lifestyle. And so I've never had to act out of desperation. And so obviously that's not a privilege that everyone has, but the more you can kind of create a strong personal finance structure and system around your life, to be able to operate with just like pure integrity and focus on delivering the optimal outcome for your clients at every step of the way. As the years roll by, that like good karma and those good happy clients that just know, like, it shines through that you just took care of them, it starts to pay out dividends and referrals and repeat business. So whatever you can do to kind of create that structure and that foundation for yourself personally, um, I think that's worth a worthy pursuit.
So that's really good advice. I think Daniel Del Real's coming back to talk this year, and that was one of his things he talked about early on. Like, because some months you'd make $20,000 or $30,000, and other months you wouldn't make any, and you can't live a life as if you're making 20. So he paid himself a salary every month out of his real estate stuff, and he never took more for like the first couple of years, and until he really had a big savings. Connor, when people want to reach out to you to send somebody your way to go buy their short-term rental out in North Georgia, or they want you to know they're somewhere else, what's the best way they can find you, come talk to you?
Yeah, cushmanhomes.com. I've got my social links there. You can get on my email list. You can connect with me through Instagram's a good way to message me. But I've got all sorts of stuff there. cushmanhomes.com.
cushmanhomes.com, Cushma. And Connor, this has been so much fun. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks, Aaron. Enjoyed it. Good to see you.
Yeah. In Real Estate Rockstars, Connor and I were just talking about our conference in Austin that's next month. By the time you hear this, I probably have a couple spots left. You should reach out just in case if you've never been to a mastermind. This is the opposite of what you would expect. You don't walk into a room and see 10,000 people or 2,000 people. You're not sitting out of place. Like, you're going to know everybody before you leave. It will change your life. I promise. The website is realestaterockstarsmastermind.com, or come talk to me on Instagram at Aaron Amuchastegui. Connor and I would both love to see you guys next month. And if you liked this podcast, please go submit a review. Let Connor know he did a good job. So Connor, thanks again. So good to see you, buddy.
Thanks, Aaron.
Real Estate Rockstars, thanks for listening.